Okay, for the next step, we're going to go ahead and get started on drawing a basic floor plan. One of the first things you want to consider when drawing your floor plan is the size and the shape of the property, obviously. I'm going to be drawing a very simplistic rectangular house, nothing too dramatic about it. Most home styles, obviously, are not as simple as a rectangle. So the way that you go about the process of drawing it may be very different from what I'm going to show you, but the basic elements are going to be the same. First thing, obviously, as always, we're going to start by formatting our units, setting up for architectural units here, and going on from there. Whenever you draw a floor plan, you really want to say, okay, where's my starting point versus where am I going to end up? Just for bearings purposes, you have the view cube up here in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. South is the front of your house, almost uniformly, even if you were to put this house in another piece of land that say it faced north and that was the front of the house. We always say that the front of the house is kind of down at the bottom of the screen, you're facing south. The back of the house is to the north, and obviously the right and the left sides would be east and west, respectively. I normally start a floor plan on the lower left-hand corner. That's kind of my benchmark place to start and go from there. You certainly don't have to, but you definitely want to start by boxing everything in. Whenever we draw a house on our floor plan, you're going to draw walls on all the outsides, and we're drawing basically the exterior lengths of walls. Now, if you're using a different floor plan or one that's pre-existing to draw your house, using rectangle may not be your best option. You'll notice that when I start mine off, I'm simply going to draw a house that's going to be a 40-foot wide house by a 25-foot deep house, or 24-foot deep house. So I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle that's 40 foot wide by 24-foot deep. Now that gives me a generic house that I can use just to kind of start filling in the blanks. Now, if your house has lots of different shapes to it, as I said, you may start by simply drawing lines in different directions and say, okay, this first wall goes over 15 feet, then it jogs in for 5 feet, and then goes over for 5 feet, and then comes back out again. However a house lays out, you're obviously going to pick the method that works best for you, but the basic idea is the same. I want to basically wind up with the outside perimeter of my home. This would be as if you were walking around and you were running your hand around the outside of the entire house. This is all the walls you would touch on the outside. Now, walls don't have a thickness simply of paper thin or 1 inch. We obviously have to give it some sort of definition or depth to it. Most exterior walls, depending on obviously location where it's going to be built, material that it's constructed of, and all of that, are typically what we classify as a standard 6-inch wall. They can be thicker than that, obviously, but we say 6 inches. That number comes from several different factors. The first key factor is that a 2x4 stud wall is fairly common building material. The 2x4s themselves are actually 3.5 inches wide, and then you throw a 1/2 inch of drywall on the inside of the house, bringing you up to 4. And then your exterior siding material can consist of several different layers of things, bringing it up to usually around 5 to 5.5 inches in width. Well, 6 inches is close enough for us, and really the outside measurement is the one that really matters the most. We'll talk more about modularity in another unit, but for now, what we want to do is just simply establish the thickness of these outside walls. So I'm going to start by offsetting all these walls, that 6-inch measurement. Now this offset distance is going to give me basically walls that have a material value to them or a thickness to them that I can see and relate to. One of the things I want to do is I want to show these walls as being interjoined. And to interjoin those walls, it's simply a matter of going through and cleaning them up. What I do is I use the chamfer tool to do this. And you notice at the bottom of the screen here, the chamfer distance is set for 0, which means when I use the chamfer distance, it's going to make it a 0 by 0 setting. And I actually did that incorrectly. Let's try this again. There we go. And that will erase those corners. I'm going to do the same thing here. And chamfer all of my outside walls so that I have nice 90-degree interior angles on the walls. Now, that gives me my outside wall area. If yours is shaped variously and you have lots of different angles to it, obviously you're going to have to draw your lines in and set it up accordingly. This is my basic floor plan. Now, I may decide that I'm going to put a garage on here later on, and I'll do that in another video. But for now, I'm going to start off by just simply dividing my space up. My house is 40 feet wide here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 bedrooms on the back side as well as a kitchen. whenever we can, whenever possible, we want to take our house and we want to break it down into segments that are fairly even. If I draw a line vertically from side to side, it breaks the horizontal space up into two basically 20-foot by 20-foot areas. This 20-foot by 20-foot area gives me kind of a starting point, and then I'm going to draw another line from here to here. And I would be able to say, okay, I can get out of this one space, I can get one bedroom, two bedrooms out of one space. So I'm simply going to just start by drawing and dividing my space up into sections here. What I'm doing is I'm breaking out my interior partitions up, and I'm going to go ahead and trim this line off right there. Now, when you're looking at it, you may be saying, well, I don't really have any wall definition to the inside of this, and that's correct. What we're going to do next is we're going to actually give the wall thickness or wall definition to it, just like the exterior walls. The difference between interior walls and exterior walls is the wall thickness. These walls are all based on a 4-inch wall thickness as opposed to the 6-inch. Again, a 3.5-inch stud, and you have a 1/2-inch drywall on either side. Now, if you add those up, you're saying, well, that's 4.5 inches, and that's true, but the 4-inch wall thickness is enough to give us our defined space. To do that, there's really only one good way to put in walls, I think, in terms of making all the sizes. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to create a new layer. And my layer, I'm going to label this new layer. I'm going to call it center walls, or center line for walls. And what this allows me to do is to change all those lines that I just put in, make them into a line type that I can actually use. Go ahead and make that center line, say OK there, make that center line and say OK there. And now I can use these lines to draw my wall types. Now, just as a reminder, whenever you do create a line type and you can't see it, LT SCALE for line type scale. I can make that a factor of 12, and then I can actually see the lines of the dashes. Now that I have my walls in place, I have a bedroom here and a bedroom here. Let's go ahead and draw in the actual walls themselves. To do that, I'm going to type in a command called MLine, and that stands for multi-line. You'll notice there's a couple of things about it down here. It says justification is top, scale is 0, and style is standard. What I want to do first is set my justification to 0 so that it draws right in the middle of it, which would be the middle of this line here. I want to set my scale factor to 4 because we just said our wall size was 4 inches wide. Now I can draw lines, and it'll pick the center of the line being 0 and allow me to put in my walls exactly where I want them to be. And then once I've done that, I can very easily turn off my wall center line. Now, I need some cleaning up to do here, but it gives me kind of the basic idea of what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and trim out these walls. Maybe I will. Trim out these walls here. And actually, and just remember now I have to start by exploding these. Now I can trim these out. And what that does is it separates them into pieces, and I can get rid of the extra bits that I don't need, which would be all the intersecting pieces, so that I wind up with a nice clean wall. Oops, let me explode this one as well. Now I can use a trim command. And clean up all my walls. Once that's all done, my wall types are all set up. I've got basically 2 bedrooms here and what may be a family room or some other type of room here. I've got a few more to do here on the back side. My ultimate goal is to basically get all my walls put in place so that you can see the partitions as they show up in the house. One of the things you want to keep in mind as you're putting in your partition walls is that you're going to have some exterior walls that may line up with your interior walls, and they may not line up exactly. You want your exterior walls to dominate in that case, and I'll show you an example of that in the next video. But for now, what I want is to have my room set up, and I want to basically figure out where I'm going to start putting in my doors and my windows. That'll be in another video in another time. what we have basically 2 bedrooms here, maybe a living room space, space for a kitchen, and maybe a dining room. I've got some other items I want to throw in here, but for now I just got my walls in place and everything's looking pretty good.